Africa's 2024 election season, comprising 19 presidential and general polls, got off to unpromising and alarming start this past week after the re-election of President Azali Assoumani to an effective fifth term. Violent protests against the result broke out in Moroni, the capital of Comoros. The government responded by imposing a nighttime curfew and deploying the army on the streets. The United Nations Commissioner for Human Rights appealed for calm and for the authorities to show restraint in dealing with the protests. Here's a report.
This is Moroni, the capital of the Comoros island. An uneasy calm is settling in after angry protesters went on a rampage across the capital and other areas to express their dismay at the re-election of Azali Assoumani as president for a fourth term. An overnight curfew was even imposed in the East African island nation after the army was called in to quell the tensions. The January 14th elections were conducted smoothly, with Comorians casting their votes in the Indian Ocean archipelago's presidential elections. However, the opposition was divided on boycotting the election. Even the poll observers gave the voting a clean bill of health.
We said that the elections went well overall and that, I repeat, if you did not hear correctly, it was peaceful, tranquil.
Eventually, the president won a new 5-year term, defeating 5 opponents and garnering 62.97% of the votes.
It was the people of the Comoros who made the choice. So yes, in our predictions, we were expecting it. But we were pleasantly surprised by the outcome. Now the hardest part remains, showing the people who put their trust in us that they were right to do so.
And that's when the whole atmosphere of the country went south, literally. With unrest in the capital, several opposition leaders moved the Supreme Court to urge the judges to annul the election results. They claimed the whole process was flawed, while some praised and saluted the courage of the demonstrators.
You know, we as politicians are against all forms of violence. But in relation to these spontaneous movements, I salute the courage of these young people who expressed their discontent and that today we have got to this point. Why? Because the Independent National Election Commission has published results which do not conform to the reality of things. And unfortunately, the authorities, instead of finding a solution, brought in the army to repress these young people.
A former army chief of staff, Colonel Assoumani, came to power in a coup in the year 1999, in one of the many military takeovers that have rocked the archipelago since independence. In 2002, he stepped down as military ruler and won the presidential election for the newly constituted Union of Comoros, made up of 3 semi-autonomous islands, each with its own separate leadership. He reluctantly handed over to civilians in 2006 under a new constitution that established a rotating presidency between the 3 islands of the Union. Assoumani then retired to farming before returning to politics and winning re-election in 2016 in a vote marred by violence and allegations of irregularities. During his rule, Assoumani has been accused of creeping authoritarianism. During this year's campaign, Assoumani hailed his government's construction of roads and hospitals. But in a country where 45% of the 870,000 population live below the poverty line, plagued by electricity cuts and water shortages, he has faced popular criticism. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.